don't, my name is Mark Bradford. I'm the England Athletics Regional Coach Lead for Throws in the southwest of England. Please feel free to get in contact with me if you have any queries or require any signposting. My contact details are on the screen in front of you. So what I've done is I've drawn down some of my own thoughts and those of my peer group to present to you what I believe are the most important considerations for coaching. You may not necessarily agree with all of them, but that's your prerogative, and that's absolutely fine. As coaches, we're all individuals and we've all got our own ways of doing things. I'll be absolutely amazed if you do agree with everything. So what I'm going to do is list what I consider the main attributes that great coaches have in common. And I wonder actually how many of you will tick 10 out of 10 against those. I can tell you now, it certainly won't be me, as I'm pretty much a work in progress still, even after these years. There's going to be a Q&A session at the end of the webinar where I'll look forward to answering some of your questions. And I know that Nick will chip in where he feels he can add value as well. So Nick, if we could progress, please. So the aims of the webinar tonight is to understand the purpose and the process behind great coaching. As I mentioned, we're going to identify 10 key attributes of a great coach and how to develop them. We're going to provide a clear pathway for coach development and learn why and how to develop a coaching philosophy. Yes, please, Nick. So what is great coaching? It requires a really clear vision of what we and our athletes wish to achieve. To achieve this, we need to plan effectively and deliver a training program that makes goals attainable. Above all, we should be committed and consistent and clear with our messaging and behaviours, building trust and respect in those we coach. Now, as coaches, we should have learnt the basics for teaching skills acquisition with a good understanding of the components of fitness, energy systems, technical and biomechanical requirements to teach the throws. With this particular webinar tonight, I'm going to look a little bit more outside the technical toolbox. So in this day and age, we can access a wealth of scientific information based on modern research analysis to help us with our skill learning and performance. To support our continuous learning, websites such as England Athletics Hubs provides great expert-approved information on topics such as biomechanics, nutrition, physiology, psychology, etc. We can improve our own knowledge around these subjects either by checking into the Athletics Hub and referencing some of the data there, or by attending some of the great training days that we organise, national level coach and athletes days. They're held regionally. Our movement skills and physical preparation workshops, and our regional coach and athlete development days. And periodically across the throws, we do have masterclasses. Now, all of these are available to book online on the EA website, and I would encourage you to keep checking in there. So the art of great coaching comes when we analyse the scientific data and we actually convert it into a training program to help develop the athlete. To achieve this, we require an in-depth knowledge of the event and the athlete concerned. By understanding the science, which is the foundation of training, a well-designed program can be developed that will help the athlete reach their full potential. In summary, great coaching should be seen as the art of understanding the science and then applying it. However, sometimes there comes a point in a coaching relationship where the coach makes reflection and perhaps feels he or she has taught the athlete all they know technically about their event. This doesn't necessarily have to prove a limiting factor in terms of progression. Great coaching can and should take an athlete beyond the limitations of the coach's own knowledge. By working from the athlete's experience and perceptions, rather than the coach's, of what they can feel and what the coach can't see, creates a whole new dimension, a way forward for growth. This is very much an athlete-centered approach where the athlete leads, the coach being the guide and the advisor. Planning for performance. If we fail to plan, we plan to fail, quite literally. Effective planning is our ability to integrate the influencing factors that result in a high level of performance in those that we teach. So some of the things that we need to consider there are, where is the athlete now? Now we can do that using the profiling tool. Where do they need to get to? That's identifying the goals, the process steps, performance and outcome. And then finally, what does the athlete need to do? Well, we assess the strength and limitations via screening and testing, and we set a focused program based on the data that comes back to us that addresses these. So as a coach, what do we need to do? We need to quite simply plan, do, and review. Set the program, deliver it, and review its effectiveness. And finally, how will we know if we've actually made progress? Well, we can monitor this via testing and adapt it if learning is seeming not to occur or there's no actual progression in terms of performance. If the basics, direction of movement, and rhythm are correct, we are likely to see skill learning occur. Now, being unaware of an athlete's preferred learning style can actually have a negative impact on skill learning and performance. Everyone has their own unique preference for learning, and there is a skill being able to recognize what this is. Being able to adjust how we coach to suit the individual needs of athletes is a hallmark of great coaching. Typically, an athlete doesn't just learn in one way. They sometimes prefer a combination, though the one they tend to lean towards is their preferred style. The three major ways of learning, which we should all be aware of, are visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. Now, if you look at the top of the slide, you'll see there is a diagram there, and this refers to the Honey and Mumford assessment tool that determines which learning style you can attribute to any athlete. It helps people to understand their learning style and seek opportunities to learn using that particular style. So there are four key types of learners here. So the activists, they like to embrace a new challenge and generally receptive to skill learning. The coach intervention tip here will be to let them dive in, have an experiment, but do ask them to reflect afterwards, get that feedback from the athlete. Then there's the reflectors. These are the cautious types. They observe, they make analysis based on previous experiences, and they often stand back a little bit. So the coach intervention tip there will be encourage them to have a go and explain to them that it's okay not to be perfect straight away. If need be, let them observe an activist. Thirdly, we've got the theorists. These are the very disciplined, self-disciplined people. They aim to rationalize everything and identify with systematic theories. The tip here for intervention will be to explain the mechanics in detail to them and the logic behind it. Encourage them to test and discuss their own theories by practice. And finally, we've got the pragmatists. These are the ones that are confident and quick to test new ideas, and most importantly, become very over-impatient with over-instruction. So the tip here would be, make sure the practice environment is as close to the performance environment as possible, giving them a sense of reality, and ask them to how they're actually going to use what they've learned at competition. So there are actually 3 key stages of learning surrounding these different styles of learning, and these are the cognitive, the associative, and the autonomous. So cognitive at the very beginning there, where you've got a novice attempting to master a skill, not always getting it right, and expending a lot of mental and physical effort. With the associative stage, there is definitely an understanding or awareness there, and the athlete is trying to improve the skill. Generally, they get better consistency, but there's still some errors present. And finally, you get the autonomous phase, where the athlete has got that self-awareness and has learned the skill well and can perform it with little or no conscious effort. As coaches that have all been educated and familiar with the UKA coaching curriculum, we're probably more familiar with Sir John Watmore's principle, unconscious competence, etc. and that. But I thought it was worth sharing with you the Honey and Mumford one, because I believe that actually is a little bit more detailed, and it helps you to identify the type of learner you're dealing with. Okay, please, Nick. So every person that we coach is an individual. No 2 minds and bodies are the same, and it's an athlete's awareness of the physical sensations they experience during the exercise, at least to improve physical efficiency. Developing this kinesthetic awareness increases a fluidity, as there is less focus on the movement pattern and more reliance on proprioception feedback. Now, this can be developed through focused practice. From awareness, we look to develop self-awareness, mentioned that a second ago, where the athlete's actual understanding of what's going on around them is very high. Now, as coaches, this is a little bit of a watch out. We should actually be aware of over-imposing our views of what we believe the right technical model should look like and how to do it, as this can, in some cases, actually suppress learning. It's always beneficial to adopt the guided discovery approach. Let the athletes discover it and feel it for themselves. After all, how are they going to develop that self-awareness otherwise? So it's also important that we teach the athlete to take responsibility for their thoughts and actions. When it occurs, commitment and performance ultimately improves. Yet again, we cannot impose this. There has to be choice and acceptance on the part of the athlete. Otherwise, the possibility of blame remains when things start going wrong. Just be aware of that. So we also need to build the athlete's confidence in their own ability, and that does require us to let go of the apron strings whenever we possibly can. Our natural instinct as coaches is to take control, but we have to relinquish that control if we're going to see the athlete prosper. And we should also let the athlete know that their success is because of their own efforts, and importantly, that we believe and trust in them to make their own decisions, going back to that guided discovery principle there. Fundamentally, the intent of all our coaching interactions, and this is at the bottom of the screen, should be to build self-belief. There isn't actually one definitive model for coaching. It means different things to all of us. There isn't actually a right or a wrong. It's what works. So it's actually about more than producing just successful athletes, great coaching. It's about developing people of all ages and abilities as a whole, that inclusivity. The impact of our coaching should, in theory, extend far wider than the training ground. and have an influence on multiple aspects of an athlete's life. Great coaching, I wouldn't view it as teaching. It's more about creating the right conditions for learning to occur. It's about us as coaches developing a culture of fear-free thinking to facilitate learning. Trust and support are key to developing such a culture where our thinking and behaviours become a catalyst for that learning to occur. So great coaching is also the ability to unlock and harness the athlete's true potential to maximise performance. It's about helping them to learn for themselves rather than having prescriptive instruction delivered at them. It should be athlete-led and centered, where the coach relies on open questioning. It's that whole push-pull dynamic there to raise awareness that leads to learning and ultimately retention that creates self-awareness. Okay, the next one, please, Nick. So in regards to the process of great coaching, we're taught when we are being educated as young coaches about what this looks like. In essence, it's plan, deliver, and evaluate. Plan based on the needs and goals, providing the training, and observing and analysing and evaluating the results that we see. To be honest, though, there is a lot more to consider on top of this if our coaching is to prove truly effective. We need to recognise that some of the most debilitating obstacles to development often reside in the mind of the athlete. These internal obstacles are often more limiting than the external ones. I've heard it said that it can be like having an opponent in your head. I've actually heard that said by an athlete. Now, if we can help the athlete identify and understand these limiting factors, we can assist them with strategies to help reduce or eliminate the issues. If successful, what we will do is promote a natural learning ability. That will come to the surface, and we'll find that as coaches, we're stepping back a little bit more with minimal input. So everybody has a natural learning capability, which is actually disrupted by over-instruction. So only coach what an athlete needs, recognise that, then step back, watch, and question. So it's really important that we see athletes in terms of future potential, not previous past performances. This helps us plan for what we believe is possible rather than our thought processes being clouded by previous outcomes. If we don't do this, we may never truly know what an athlete is capable of achieving. It's important that we think in terms of potential rather than performance alone. Performance alone is a distraction that can blinker the coach, causing them to ignore the potential that's waiting to be unlocked. If we genuinely believe there is potential there, then the process of unlocking it becomes somewhat easier. It's vital we have a genuine optimistic belief about this that inspires the athlete to step up and take action. Now, our sincerity is paramount. We will inspire through our optimism, or on the flip side of that, we'll lose buy-in because our body language does not match up to what we're saying. And finally on this page, what we've got is grow for it. So many of you will be familiar with Sir John Whitmore's GROW model as a development tool, but I wonder how many of you actually have ever used it in your coaching to help identify goals and help work out a plan of training to assist an athlete to attain these goals. So quite simply, the acronym GROW stands for G is for goals and aspirations, R is for reality, that's the evaluating the current situation, where the athlete and coach are, and any internal or external obstacles that may be present. O is for options, the possibilities based on the strengths and the resources available. And W is for the will. This is the actions and accountability for the athlete. How are we going to actually get there? What is the work we're going to do? The key really here is to set a goal which is inspiring and challenging, not just smart. Then what you need to do is move flexibly through the other stages and possibly revisit the goal if necessary. The final will element is the barometer for success here. What it does is convert the initial desire and intention into a successful action. So if you haven't used that before, do a bit of research on that, and it does actually prove to be quite a powerful tool. Okay, Nick, ready for the next one? So, as promised, 10 key attributes of a great coach. There is no priority order here. I believe they're all equally important. I would encourage you to do the same exercise here that I've done. I spent quite a bit of time putting these together, throwing ones out, putting stuff in. It's a really good exercise, actually. And what you can do then is actually measure yourself against some of these attributes and see how you stack up. So if anybody fancies doing that, I'd be interested in you sharing that with me. I'd love to see what you come up with. So first of all, displays great awareness and self-awareness. And that's coupled with great humility there. The great coach is an effective communicator and a listener that gets buy-in from people. They have an authoritative and challenging air, though always they are just and fair with their behaviours and actions. They are always attentive to the needs of the athlete and highly supportive and compassionate when need be, and always respectful. The great coach is passionate with an optimistic outlook that motivates and inspires. They are a visionary and they have a holistic approach to learning that does set them apart from their contemporaries. They are consistent and they exhibit exemplary behaviours, being highly organised people. They show great commitment to personal development and are always receptive to change where change is required, where you need to change the goals and the strategy that supports that. They display great integrity and they lead with confidence as a role model. And finally, what I put in there was they're a great relationship builder and they build communities of practice far outside their own normal circle of training, and they're really keen to share best practice with other people. Okay, Nick, we can move to the next one. So what I've done here is put a couple of slides together that just gives a little bit more detail, in my opinion, on what sets a great coach apart from a good coach. So being consistent in their approach. The good coach has some of the key attributes that I listed over the page, but a great coach, in my opinion, has all of them and consistently exhibits them. They are supremely confident in their own ability to influence change and success. They also understand the strength of community. The good coach feels safe in their own training environment. The great coach understands the importance of creating strong communities of practice where they engage, are open to sharing, suggestion and feedback, be it criticism sometimes. They should be receptive to that. The great coach will build hubs of excellence, not just within their own environment, they will venture beyond that as well. Everywhere they visit, everywhere they engage, they turn into a hub of excellence. They create these exceptional environments and an atmosphere for learning. They instill commitment in athletes because they invest the time in understanding the person before the athlete and before the actual discipline. Now, athletes are only athletes for an hour or two at most each day. For the other remaining time, they're human beings, just normal people. So many coaches, good coaches, focus on preparing the athlete to perform. The truly great coaches prepare the human being, all aspects of the lifestyle, so that they can get the athlete to perform on cue and quicker, so they attain their goals in a quicker time frame. So we'll flip over the page there, please, Nick. So a continuation, as I said, a couple of more points. The great coach has a clear concept of practice, whereas the good coach believes practice makes perfect. The great coach takes this a step beyond, knowing that performance practice makes for perfect performance by setting the right environment to develop focus and the commitment. Ultimately, perfect practice makes permanent. The great coach pursues holistic teaching and imparts their knowledge. The good coach equally shares their technical knowledge with the athletes they coach, but the great coach teaches life lessons that go way beyond sport. They see themselves as preparing athletes not just for achievement in sport, but also in terms of personal fulfillment that enriches them to benefit their wider community. And ultimately, that great coach becomes a life-changing aspect in an athlete's life. So great coaches meticulously prepare for success. Now, obviously, the good coach does plan for the athlete development, that's a given. But the great coach realizes that competition is not the time to find out where athletes' physical and mental limits are. They set training plans that are more challenging, physically, mentally, technically, tactically, and emotionally, so that then competition athletes are preparing for. Then the competition athletes are preparing for. So the bottom line of it is create a very challenging training environment as you near towards a particular championship cycle, so that you can focus the mind, focus the body, and get the best out of the athlete. You can also see if there are any issues that need to be addressed. Don't leave that to the day of competition. So great coaches also understand that the core goal of every training session is to ensure that it provides optimal opportunity and stimulus for an athlete's preparation. So Nick, we'll go over the page, please. So I thought it only right to share with you what I've learned today on my own coaching journey. And I just want to give you 4 examples, and there's little pictures there on the right-hand side. The first one there is the first point I'm going to make, and that's me being spoken to by Steve Backley at a Loughborough coaching masterclass. I think it was in 2017. Now, Steve observed something in a throw sequence of movement that I failed to recognize. I missed completely. I ended up apologizing for this, and I don't know, I think I felt a little bit ashamed, especially in front of the great Mr. Backley. Steve was really compassionate, and he said, don't be so hard on yourself. He said that I actually worked out what I was going to be looking for before the throw even happened. You can't actually see it all, so decide where your focus is going to be, and if need be, communicate that to the athlete. That can actually promote better feedback from the athlete. So since that time, I've been perfecting this, and I can actually say that I'm getting better and better results than ever. And I don't get overwhelmed now by trying to analyze a whole collective sequence of movements. I just focus on 1 or 2 things, mainly one thing. So the second point I want to raise is that less is more. It's quite self-explanatory, isn't it? But this came to being when I was working with Finnish national javelin coach Kimmo Kinnunen at another Loughborough masterclass. I think this was in 2016. He was observing all the coaches, English coaches, coaching that day. And after some time, he came over to me and said in his typical, pretty blunt way, Mark, shut up. Every single one of you is talking too much, over-instructing the throwers and confusing them. Your feedback to them is random and does not provide clear solutions. Think about what you want to say before you say it, and then tell them exactly what you want, step back, watch, and let them learn for themselves. Now, since then, I've been making a real conscious effort to actually do what he told me to do, so that I get my message across clearly and concisely. I'm a long way off that yet, to be honest with you. I still have a default that I drift to sometimes, but I am aware of it and I try to rectify that as I go. So the third point I want to make is seek out who you admire most. Build relationships with these people and ask them for help by acknowledging what you don't know and being humble. Be honest with them. 9 times out of 10, these people will share with you. And then you can be a sponge, soaking up their knowledge and filtering out what you need, what's applicable to your athletes. I had this exact situation at another masterclass at Loughborough back in 2017. I was fortunate to meet ex-Olympian and Commonwealth gold medalist Nick Neeland. He's in the picture there. He's the third circle down, the guy with the javelin in his hand. And I said to Nick that I'd come to a point where I was struggling. I had an athlete that was showing potential and that was looking for Commonwealth Games selection. And I didn't know how to get there. I didn't know the strategies, the plans, what was required. I'd never been there myself, so I had no experience. So Nick came on board as a mentor, and I've been working with him now for a couple of years, and he's been helping me to coach better. I think the key message from Nick is only give the athlete what they need. Dispense with everything else. Nick's a very direct guy. He gets his message across clearly and precisely, making the athlete totally clear about what's required. His feedback is spot on. And that is something I'm trying to emulate, some of those good qualities in Nick. But I won't copy him because he's a different personality. So I'll just try to emulate some of those good qualities that I see in him. And so this is another work in progress. And if this actually goes well, then we may get CWG selection for 2022. Keep you posted on that one. And the very last one, to me, this is about what I've learned from this particular guy, bottom of the screen there. Well, I've learned many things from Mike McNeil. I can say he's an all-round mentor. Not only has he taught me skills in my coaching, how to be more observant, how to set up cues better for athletes, how to provide feedback better. He's also taught me about being more consistent with my behaviors, because how I behave is how athletes will respond. And that's really important. Mike's also said to me that I should never overestimate your own importance in the sport. Your sport doesn't actually owe you anything. Sounds a bit of a harsh statement, but it's very true. Don't overthink your own value. You're just a cog that is facilitating learning. And also step back, let the athlete enjoy their success. After all, you're just the coach. And I don't just mean the coach, you're part of a team, but you should sit a little bit in the shadows sometimes. So one of the things that is key for me with what Mike does day in, day out is I see Mike's passion for what he does. And if he loses that passion, I'm sure that he would never get the buy-in that he gets from his athletes. And that I've made that a point for myself that whatever happens throughout my day, when I turn up for a training session to work with athletes, make sure I'm passionate, okay? And I can infuse that in my athletes. If I lose that passion, I know it's going to be time to get out of the sport. Okay, if we can move on, please, Nick. So what we've got up here is a pathway for continuous development. You'll be familiar with this because it resides on the England website. So if we look at the main graphic there, the blocks in red, they show us the formal coaching qualifications, what we can achieve, moving from assistant to athletics coach and then to an event group coach, specializing in the throws at that point. What I'd like to do, though, is actually give a little bit more focus to the right-hand side of the screen. And this is about the other informal development opportunities that we can access. Okay, we've got things there like the movement skills workshops, the physical prep workshops, disabilities workshops, the regional training days, the master classes. There's plenty of opportunity here for coaches to continue with their learning and their development. It doesn't just stop when you hit the end of the qualification ladder. As an RCL myself, I would actively encourage you to get involved in the regional training days that are going to be coming up for this season, the new season, sorry. I think our earliest dates are going to be around December time now, but we will keep you posted about that. And many of you have actually been involved in the development of the technical excellence frameworks for discus, javelin, shot put, and hammer. I know that many of you have attended those. Now, what we're going to be doing as RCLs is we're going to be rolling all of these out to you, and they're on the Athletics Hub at the moment. So I'd ask you to actually have a look through those. And over the coming weeks, regionally, the RCLs are going to be setting up regional communities of practice where we want to discuss these frameworks with you. We want to hear your thoughts and whether they need change, because this is going to be the basis for how we move forward in the throws going forward. Okay, so Nick, if we just flick over the page there. Now, I'm not going to read this information to you. This quite literally is the detail behind the previous slide. You can download this, I think, from early next week when this particular presentation goes onto the Athletics Hub website. It gives you a little bit more information around the formal and informal development areas that you can access as a coach. Okay, signposting. Well, we've got the Athletics Hub, just mentioned that. We talked about CPD opportunities, movement skills, physical prep. I would encourage you to attend as many of those as possible. Regional training days, as I said, a whole new season of days coming up. We'll keep you posted on the dates. And just a recap on who your RCLs are for the particular regions. So in the north, we've got James Taylor, newly on board. For the Midlands, we've got Stuart Carlo. For the southeast, Gary Power, and myself in the southwest. Now, your talent event leads, the ones that have been helping to develop the technical excellence frameworks, are for shot, Stuart Carlo, discus, Mark Chapman, for hammer, Gary Harrington, and David Turner for javelin. Okay, we'll move over, please, Nick. So just before we go into questions, I thought I'd say what I believe to be the most poignant slide till last. See, we've been identifying, or I've identified, key attributes of a great coach, but I want you to go away and do that exercise. And what I'm going to say to you is, what are you going to do with this information afterwards? When you've got all these great attributes, what are you going to do? Are you going to put them in a drawer, forget about them, or are you going to somehow try to develop them for yourself? So the best way to actually use those attributes or develop those attributes that you identify is to develop a coaching philosophy. So why do you actually need a philosophy? Well, a coaching philosophy is a really important tool for guiding how you coach. It provides you with some clear guidance on the objectives that you should pursue and the approach that's required to achieve them. It helps you make more effective, consistent decisions and coach in a way that, in particular, adheres to your values. Now, your success as a coach will depend more on your coaching philosophy going forward than any other factor. It will determine how wisely you use your knowledge, manage and lead your athletes. Also, how you actually engage and communicate with other influencers out there. So it's actually the philosophy itself, the coaching philosophy, it is an exclusive set of values and objectives and principles, and it revolves around certain personality traits that you as an individual possess. It aims to help you and only you achieve your coaching goals. It's unique to you. So from time to time, with your philosophy by your side, you can remind yourself of why you coach and how to stay true to your values and the coaching approach that you've developed. Now, when you're developing or writing a philosophy, it doesn't need to be much. It can just be a few words or a statement, but something that you can check back in with periodically to see that if you're on track or not. So how do we write and implement a coaching philosophy? Really simple. And I would, again, ask that each and every one of you take some time out of your busy coaching routine to actually complete this exercise. You need to answer 6 key questions and then formulate a statement around the answers you provide. And I would encourage you to share it with athletes, with parents, with other coaches, and I'd really love it if you'd share it with me. So the questions are, why do you coach? What are your values and expectations? What do you want to be known for? What are your goals and aspirations, and how will you communicate them? What are your strengths and weaknesses? And what people do you admire and respect the most? So there are benefits, distinct benefits to the coaching philosophy, some which we've outlined already. But you learn a lot about yourself and how you can improve as a person as well as a coach. It contextualizes understanding of your coaching, and you get to know your athletes better. You have a more intimate relationship that ultimately allows them to grow and you to grow. It's a win-win situation. But above all else, tread your own path. Have a philosophy based on your own personality. Copying somebody else just doesn't come into the equation here. This is unique to you. Now you're probably wondering what that little bit of writing is on the right-hand side there. That's my philosophy. It's one that is due for an update because I believe that every couple of years you should reflect and if need be, make change. So I'm in the process of updating that, but that's my philosophy. Create a culture, an environment that promotes passionate learning. Be responsible and caring, minimize interference, make yourself redundant. Wow. Yeah, that would be quite something. but hopefully I can achieve that. Okay, that concludes where we are with the presentation. So please, I hope you got a few takeaways there, and I hope some of your questions now may be around developing a philosophy. So Nick, I'm just going to go full screen again.
Yeah. Great stuff there, Mark. Really enjoyed that. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Has anybody got any questions that they would like to ask Mark? Throw them in the chat box, put a question mark at the end of it, and it makes it easier for me to put it onto the main screen. So any questions for that so far? Everyone's just thanking you, Mark. Well, there must be some questions in there.
Guys, I'm really happy to share that, especially my own learnings. And I'm not scared of sharing the mistakes I made either, and what I still need to learn.
People are typing.
Uh-huh.
No one's typing anymore. Okay. Oh, here we go.
Uh-huh.
Oh, it's a comment about how nice it was to hear.
Okay, yeah.
Coaches, so
yeah, comments are always welcome. Any feedback is welcome. Thank you very much for that, Amanda. That's much appreciated. And you're absolutely right. Just because you've got a few years coaching experience under your belt doesn't mean you're not learning, Amanda. I'm learning every single day. I surprise myself sometimes where I thought I knew things and found out actually I didn't know that much about it at all. So what I would advise, Amanda, is surround yourself with people that you can learn from. Actively network.
Another question in. So any advice for foreign coaches already at high level coaching? So if they're already working in that performance space, where did they go next?
Absolutely. But let me ask you a question. You may be at that level of coaching performance, but there comes a point in time where you need to ensure that progress still occurs with the athletes. Sometimes we hit stumbling blocks there where progression sort of falters or it doesn't quite happen at the rate that it previously did. So what my advice to you on that would be is stop thinking about the technical input that you can provide, shift the balance of power to the athlete, learn more about the athlete, learn what their needs are, learn what their limitations are, let them guide you. So it becomes very athlete-centered, and ultimately you just you're their guide and you're an advisor, you're their sounding board. So it's about the shift in the balance of power, if I can call it power. That's probably the wrong word, but I honestly believe that none of us ever truly get to the top of our game. Never truly. We may win world championships, we may win Olympics, but that's just singular achievements. It's about the legacy that we leave. It's about the consistency of our coaching, where we can do the same thing time and time again. I hope that gives you, well, provokes some thought. I hope so.
Some more people typing in there. So just a quick, just a comment from Miguel saying that they've got a very similar structure within. Yeah. So you said earlier that you were looking to sort of review your own coaching philosophy. So what are you thinking? What are you going to change? And what's made you think that there's need for a change?
I haven't seen anything that I fundamentally disagree with there, Nick. I still adhere to a lot of those values and objectives. But I'm actually wondering, because I wrote this I think it's nearly 3 years ago now, have I actually progressed as a coach? And if I have, how have I actually progressed? What have I achieved? And has that changed my viewpoint in any sense?
So do you think you've developed like new strengths potentially and minimized your old weaknesses?
I do. There's still weaknesses there, but I think I'm gradually shifting the balance. The more I learn, the older I get, the more wiser I get in the coaching role. I think I'm shifting the balance towards strengths more and more. But above all else, Nick, I think the main reason I'm doing it is just to keep it fresh, to keep it alive. I honestly think that sometimes we write programs, year plans, strategies, and we deliver them, and then we put them possibly back in the drawer, and we think, oh, bring that out again next year. But does it actually work more than once? You know, time doesn't stand still for any coach. So for me, it's just about making sure that it is current with where I am as a coach.
I think the bit that strikes me there is in terms of like accountability. I know you've put in here about you're responsible in care and like you are responsible for that program, but you're like accountable for the athlete's development and your own development as well. It's interesting.
Yes.
Any advice for young or level 1 coaches?
Yes. So that's the new assistant coaching qualification, Nick, isn't it? So what I would say is,
it might be an equivalent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, of course, yes, yeah. It's not UK based. What I would say, and this is based on my own experience, if your governing body organises workshops where they share information regarding coaching skills and developing coaching skills, or even around particular subjects as strength and conditioning, nutrition, anything like that, I would be really hungry and I would sign up to as many of those as you can and attend as many of those as you can. And most importantly, build a diary. Build a diary. That's exactly what I done. I look back on a diary I built when I was in your position over 10 years ago, and I look back and I still call on that learning today sometimes, because I came into contact with so many wonderful people, so many wonderful coaches, and I tapped their brains, and I would encourage you to do so. I would actually, don't be a silent person, ask as many questions as you can. These great coaches, they love talking about what they do. Believe you me, they love sharing best practice. So attend as many events as you can that your governing body organises. Do as much research as you can off your own back. The only problem with research in this day and age is it can be somewhat conflicting. So my preference for you at your level now is to be guided by experts in the field, people that are affiliated to your governing body. So be selective who you listen to, but there is a wealth of information out there. Just make sure you get it from the right channels. I hope that's
critical skills is key as a coach. I think definitely.
Yeah.
Especially at that level, you don't want to just sort of accept anything.
No.
Because it's given to you freely. So yeah, critical at all times, at all stages. So
yeah. I hope that answers your question.
Just trying to kind of work out what some of the other questions are.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Any more questions coming in?
Nick, can I ask a question of everybody quickly?
Yeah.
You can just respond with a quick yes, no, whatever on screen, everybody. How many people are going to go away from this webinar tonight and at some point over the coming weeks build a list of what they believe are the top 10 attributes of a great coach, and off the back of that have a go at writing their own coaching philosophy? Anybody going to do that? I hope so.
Oh, we've got some yes, which is great. I spent some time going through your questions earlier when we were prepping this, and I've come up with some interesting answers already. So work needed on lots of my coaching, I think. So, but I just think that that really simple process, I think even just the first question, the why do you coach, is massive for me. Kind of a great stepping stone. So it's good to see some people there agreeing to do it, which is fantastic.
Great. I will say that the time we spent together tonight, then, everybody, has been worthwhile if you just go away and do those two things.
Cool. Okay then. So we've got a few more minutes. If anyone needs to ask any questions, fire them in now. But if not, get yourself away and go and start working through those questions that Mark's posted to you. If you do need to go, another few people are saying that they do, like, just make sure you, we ask if you could fill in the feedback, that'd be much appreciated.
Yeah. And Nick, I will say to everybody, if they'd like to contact me in follow-up with, if they require any additional advice or feedback regarding building a philosophy, get in contact with me. I'd love to have a chat with you.